Secrets and Spies presents Espresso Martini with Chris Carr and Matt Fulton.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Espresso Martini. Matt, how are you?
I'm okay. It's been an interesting week. How are you doing? Are you feeling better?
Yeah, I'm. I don't know percentage terms. I'm about 87% better. I still got this little bit of my cold left, which may or may not reveal itself during the episode. I still have the odd coughing fit, but generally I'm all right, thank you. Yeah. Feeling a lot better than last week because I was just feeling really exhausted last week. So
Yes. Last week was tough. Yeah, definitely feeling better than last week.
Yeah, no, last week's episode was a tough one. And thank you everybody to everybody who's reached out. You know, I've had messages on Bluesky, Instagram. We've had text messages from friends and things. And so, no, I'm really pleased that the episode was well received because it was, it was a difficult one to record. I know I wasn't, from a technical perspective, overly happy with my performance last week. So I was quite run down and felt overly emotional about things. But that was just me and my thinking. But I actually thought it was a good episode. So I thought we did all right.
Yeah, we were, I don't know. Yeah, we were both pretty anxious about, doing that and trying to, okay, how do we sort of thread this argument? How do we make this land in a way that is appealing to people or something? And that was that was a worry of mine going into it, and I was definitely anxious to see how it would be received. But I got listeners have reached out to me in a bunch of different platforms over the last week, and the reaction universally, at least as far as I've seen, really positive. A lot of just touching comments in general, so I certainly thank listeners for that.
Yes, indeed. No, thank you everybody for listening, and thank you for reaching out. On that note, next week is our episode where we're going to be taking listener questions. So please do contact us either via email, which is secretsandspiespodcast@gmail.com, or DM us on your social media channel of choice. We're on, what are we on now? Bluesky, Instagram, Threads, Spoutable. Those are the main ones we're on. I think Bluesky is the one I spend most of my time on.
Bluesky, I think, is definitely, if you reach us on one of those other ones, we'll definitely probably see it. Yeah. But Bluesky is the one that IRL we spend the most time on, and probably the most responsive to. But yeah,
I agree. So if anybody's going to message us with a question or topic suggestion, please can you make sure you do it by Wednesday the 19th of March. And in your message, include the question or topic. And if it's a topic, please also give us a relevant link to where you sort of found or read about the topic. Could you also tell us how you'd like your name read out and your location, just so we know how to credit you on air? Because obviously it's always nice to be able to credit people properly. And I don't want to obviously reveal anything you don't want revealed. So please drop us an email. So secretsandspiespodcast@gmail.com, or just DM us on your social media app of choice. Bluesky and Instagram are probably the safest bets, but Threads and Spoutable, we will see it as well. But just make sure you get it in by the 19th. One other bit of housekeeping. So the episode is coming out on the 22nd of March. Will be our last Espresso Martini for a week. We're taking a week off. So the 29th of March, there'll be an interview in place of Espresso Martini, just because we're taking a week off to recharge our batteries. But then we'll be back on the 5th of April, and then we'll be running through until the Easter weekend, and we'll probably take that weekend off and then return. So we will let you know what we're doing for Easter. We might be able to squeeze in an episode that will go out over Easter, but I need to have a look at the dates and work that out with my chocolate schedule, because chocolate is very important.
Yes.
So there we go. So so is there anything else you'd like to share on any of that?
Get those questions in, folks. Happy to take a look at them and answer ones that we can.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, let's move into the episode itself. So today we've got quite an interesting and jam-packed episode full of a Russian spy ring that's been found guilty in the UK. So that's an interesting one. We've got updates on the Ukraine peace plan. We have a new drone ship in the US, and we ask, has Putin won? So I will kick off with the Bulgarian spies. Now, I do apologize in advance. I'm probably going to butcher a few names here or there. I do apologize. I've done my best to find the appropriate pronunciations, but with one or two names, there's still even speculation about how you should pronounce them. So I apologize in advance with a bit of dyslexia as well, but I'll do my best. And this will be a bit of a long summary because I was trying to whittle it down, but there are quite a few interesting details. So this will be a bit long, so forgive me. So we're taking notes from the Crown Prosecution Service and an article by Dan Saber in The Guardian, and this is a summary of the key details about the spy ring. So 6 members of a Russian spy ring, all Bulgarian nationals, have been convicted of espionage in the UK. 3 were found guilty after a trial, and 3 pled guilty. They were tasked with gathering information on prominent individuals and locations for the Russian state. Katrina Ivanova, 33, Vanya Gabarova, 30, Timur Ivanchev, 39, were found guilty of conspiracy to spy at the Central Criminal Court following a trial. 3 further members of the spy ring, Orlen Rusev, who's 47, Baizir Jambazov, 43, and Ivan Stoyanova, 32, previously pled guilty to spying offences. And I find it interesting that they actually pled guilty, but that's a whole other topic that we may or may not discuss. The team, who were all Bulgarian nationals, worked under the direction of Orlen Rusev and were tasked with gathering information about prominent individuals and significant locations that were of interest to the Russian state. This group of Russian spies were accused of conducting 6 main operations involving surveillance, potential kidnapping, and disruptive activities targeting individuals and institutions deemed threats or of interest to Russia. So they targeted investigative journalists. So they surveyed Christo Grozev, a Bellingcat investigator across multiple countries, gathering information on his movements and considering a honey trap plot. They also surveilled Roman Dobrogotov, I hope I got his name right there, and he's the founder of The Insider, and they were including flight surveillance via Swissair, and they also had discussions of a kidnap plot. They also planned disruptive activities, so they planned to disrupt the Kazakh embassy in London by spraying fake pig's blood and staging a fake protest to increase the standing of their Russian clients. But the most serious plot of all of this was a plot involving surveilling the US patch barracks in Stuttgart, and they were trying to gather intelligence on Ukrainian soldiers who were training on Patriot missile systems. So the spy ring planned to use a sophisticated £120,000 surveillance device called the Razor 2 IMSI catcher, which basically detects mobile phones and gets all the mobile phone data. It kind of acts as a fake mobile phone tower. And then it can get like everybody's information from their phone number to their IMEI number, etc., which is all useful information. So then you can track that phone. And what they planned to do was to hide that device in a car so they could capture the soldiers' mobile phone data, and then this data could be used to locate Patriot missile batteries in Ukraine because those soldiers might have their phone on them. So this plan was luckily foiled by the arrests before it could be executed. So as far as we know, at the moment, those Ukrainian soldiers who were training at that base have not had their data taken. The prosecution's case relied on telegram messages, travel and financial records, and technical items seized during the arrests. The evidence showed the group had acted for Russia as indicated by their targets and internal communications. Telegram messages that were exchanged between the members of the group included the facilitation of obtaining military equipment on behalf of Russia, the provisions of espionage tools, data, digital services, and software, the arranging of physical surveillance and hostile activity against targets of the Russian state, and then frequent references were also made to the FSB, the GRU, and President Putin. And then, obviously, due to this spy ring's activities, one of their targets, Christo Grozev, now lives in New York away from his family because he no longer feels safe in Europe. So it's quite a big case, this one, and I really urge you to have a look at the Crown Prosecution Service link that we'll put in our show notes, because it really goes into great detail about the things that I'm skimming over a little bit, just so we don't spend like 4 hours talking about this. But Matt, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, my main takeaway on this was, what we're sort of seeing in this case, it's not so much Russia's most elite intelligence operatives is their C or their D team, the slow horses of Russian espionage.
That's
If
being
you,
generous, I think.
yeah. But so it's this it didn't, it just wasn't spelled out explicitly in this article or the Crown Prosecution Service, the stuff that they put out. But this seems like a sub agent network below Jan Marsalek in Moscow, I believe. But I mean, so yeah, the GRU and the SVR are still, of course, running highly professional, dangerous operations across Europe. This is a cutout network run through this fugitive financier, a handful of low rent operatives, and some pretty amateurish tradecraft. These guys got caught because they were careless, but that doesn't mean that, Russia's top tier spies are making the same mistakes. They're still out there operating under the radar. One other thing here that was really just interesting to me is just like, I don't know, a character study. I thought he was sort of interesting. His role is Jan Marsalek. So
yeah, he's one I've zeroed in on a bit as well. He's fascinating.
Yeah, fraudster turned spy master who has one foot in the intelligence world, the other in the criminal underground. This seems like a uniquely Russian kind of I guess way of doing business, I guess you could say. I mean, Western intelligence agencies don't often recruit major financial criminals to run spy networks on their behalf. I'm thinking just in the past with the Russian case, there was Victor Bout, the arms dealer who was freed in a prisoner swap a few years ago for Brittany Griner. There was Semyon Mogilevich, famous Russian mobster, who had links to Russian intelligence, who's now back in Moscow. But Russia has repeatedly outsourced intelligence operations to oligarchs, mercenaries, professional criminals, such as this guy. So my question there and sort of reading some of the text messages back and forth that were included here, was Marsalek taking direct orders from Moscow or from the GRU or the SVR? Again, this reporting here doesn't say which agency was running this.
Yeah, he's reportedly works for the GRU and FSB, so it is unclear exactly which agency he potentially was working for.
So, or was he running this network at arm's length from them, gathering scraps of intel to try and impress the Kremlin? In the Russian system, where oligarchs and exiled intelligence figures are constantly trying to prove their usefulness to Moscow. I don't know. I wonder if it's possible that Marsalek was freelancing to an extent, trying to stay relevant in Russian security circles. I mean, what better prize to curry favor than possibly delivering Christo Grozev?
Yeah, well, apparently Putin dislikes personally. And it just shows Bellingcat's really getting under the skin of Putin was one of the things that came out here.
Yeah, another interesting aspect to this, it struck me as sort of a pattern, at least in some of the cases that we've seen bubbling up over recent years. This case isn't so much a classic government versus government intelligence operation, like spies spying on other spies, right? It's a government intelligence operation targeted at journalists, dissidents, activists in exile. Russian espionage,
which is ethically dodgy as fuck, basically.
Right. So, I mean, and Russian intelligence operations still, of course, focus on governments and military's rival intelligence services. But increasingly, it seems like its biggest targets are, journalists, investigative researchers, opposition figures abroad, or, at least these are the people that elicit particular ire from Putin, which is telling to me. And I think it's also perhaps true to state, the GRU and the SVR, FSB, they still run high-level operations that don't make headlines. They aren't getting rolled up every few months, but what we're seeing here is a sloppier, riskier effort that happened to get caught, but it's part of a much larger enterprise, So, I don't know. I mean, we're aware of this one instance, this one surveillance operation against a figure like Christo Grozev. Are there others? That doesn't mean there aren't other parallel operations out there that are run by like the A team.
Yeah. Well, this is it. I think one of the dangers of recruiting like untrained individuals or unprofessional individuals, if we put it that way, what was worrying in this case is how the threats of kidnap and murder were always very real, not far from the minds of the people involved. Even at the lower level, they would joke about it a little bit. There was talk of like kidnapping Grosev, drugging him, and then I don't know, I think they were going to torture him or something. In what was the reference? Was it the Batcave or Indiana Jones? Oh, there was some weird reference to some like cave or something.
It was this Indiana Jones. Yeah, it was an Indiana Jones thing. It was like his warehouse. We had all this like technical equipment. It was like a garage or a storage locker or something. We had all this technical equipment. He called it his like Indiana Jones lair. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the danger of that is somebody who's trying to impress someone might just go and cross the line and do something really stupid that actually maybe nobody wanted. You know, because one of the other key things, the Russians were claiming that Grusev and Bellingcat were working for MI6, and so they were trying to gather surveillance to prove this, and obviously didn't. And so, you know, if it was just a surveillance mission and then these people decide, hey, let's take it one step further and murder someone, you know, this is why you don't use civilians and amateurs who probably their only reference is spy fiction, like what we've talked about.
Right.
You know?
Or it could be an instance where, you go and you try to kidnap a target, you try to pull them off the street, and it escalates, and there's a struggle, and someone accidentally gets killed.
Yeah, it can happen, and it has happened in the past. You know, I think the Israelis have been involved in all sorts of stuff in the past in the 70s that's led to the wrong person getting killed and things, and you know, so it's yeah.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to?
Yes, yeah. So one other interesting thing as well, like Jumbazov used a fake Interpol ID and claimed he worked for Interpol both to the women and men he used to carry out his part of the operation. And on top of that, obviously there was this messy and manipulative relationship with the two women as well, Ivanova and Gabarova, and they both claimed in court that they had been manipulated. And obviously there's some debate about what level they were willing participants and what level they were manipulated. I'll leave you to decide how you feel on that. And the other thing as well, using civilians does sort of reveal a slight desperation on the Russians' part, and I couldn't quite figure out whether this, again, like you were saying earlier, was it a freelance operation run by Marsalek, or is this a sign of that when all these diplomats were expelled after the Skripal poisoning, that Russian spy networks have been so much disrupted that they're now getting more and more desperate and having to recruit kind of individuals?
Great point. Was there over 100 Russian diplomats that were expelled? Presumably Russian intelligence officers working under diplomatic cover that were expelled in the aftermath of the Skripal poisoning. Yeah, so that's, indeed. I mean, that would cripple any country's intelligence gathering efforts in the UK.
Yeah. The other standout for me, the sleepy town of Great Yarmouth, which is this resort town on the east coast of England, was basically where the ringleader, Orlan Rusev, was basically running the operation. And so it just shows you anywhere in England, no matter how small, could end up being used. Yeah. And I was intrigued by a coastal town too, because it's on the Great Yarmouth you can see the North Sea from there. And I don't know whether, you know, he was there for some other reason as well, or whether he was just there because he liked it, or it was a bit low key.
Yeah.
So I thought the Great Yarmouth thing was interesting. And as you've already mentioned, Marsalek himself, the man who was the mastermind and running all this from Moscow, is a fascinating guy. So the insider went as far to say he defected to Russia after the Wirecard scandal. So he went on the run in 2020, and the German authorities wanted to get him for his part of this Wirecard scandal. And Wirecard was kind of like the German equivalent of PayPal. And it was a massive fraud scandal that is considered the most significant financial fraud case in German history. And he was at the heart of it. And allegedly, Marsalek had been working for the Russians since 2014. Apparently, he was recruited by a GRU officer named Stanislav Pentlinsky. And they met on a yacht for his girlfriend's birthday party in Nice in France. This is based on reporting by the Daily Mail. Also, the Daily Mail claimed that Marsalek may have also been a one-time source for Britain's MI6 and America's CIA. What's interesting is the German minister Bernard Schmidbauer, I hope I got that right, who previously ran its intelligence services, claimed Marsalek boasted to him in one meeting that he had the security services of the world in his pocket, and he'd been talking to him for years. Now, it's believed Western intelligence was keen to have Marsalek as a source because of his connection to Wirecard, so they could closely monitor certain money laundering operations and organized crime. So the whole Marsalek being a source for MI6 and CIA is kind of interesting. And I don't know for how long he was a source or whether people sort of sussed him out or not, but certainly he became of interest to GIU from 2014. And allegedly he is a grandson of a Soviet spy, which is also interesting. And obviously he's Austrian born, not Russian born. So Marsalek's this fascinating character who I'm sure would make a brilliant protagonist of a novel one day.
Yeah, maybe not a protagonist, but maybe an antagonist. Yeah. Yeah, very,
indeed.
very kind of a Le Carre-esque character, especially also that great Yarmouth setting. I can sort of see the scene in my head. Last thing for me on this, I think this case is just another reminder that Russian intelligence and organized crime are deeply intertwined. They sort of use these Russian criminal syndicates to sort of reach out into Europe and North America to their target countries. Marsalek is an obvious example of this, but the pattern goes all the way up the chain. Whether it's the Wagner Group, he was tied into all sorts of shady stuff, state-backed hackers, troll farms, that aren't sort of directly explicitly governed by an intelligence agency, but are sort of basically like a subcontractor, or these human trafficking rings operating as cutouts for Russian intelligence. So this blending of state and criminal enterprises gives Russia, I guess you could call it a strategic advantage in a way. As a force multiplier, they can deny involvement while still getting results they hope through their network of unofficial operatives. Just a sort of different dynamic that you don't really see mimicked in Western intelligence agencies.
Yeah. I remember do you remember we talked about the Arts Lost Register a few weeks ago? Just something popped into my mind when I was talking to the founder of that. He was telling me about how the USSR used to use organized crime and the black market to raise money.
Yeah.
So that's another way for the Russian government to kind of raise money, is using organized crime. And I remember talking to even Edward Lucas about that intersection of organized crime when it comes to the sort of state murders, the state-backed murders that have gone on. Usually the people who carry it out do have connections to organized crime, because it gives them that one step removed from the Russian government. So if they do get caught, you can kind of just say it was a criminal enterprise rather than a state-backed one. So yeah, there is something very sketchy there, the way the Russian government work with organized crime. The other thing for me is back to that plot at the military base and using this Razor 2 IMSI catcher to trace mobile phones of Ukrainian soldiers. It's quite genius, actually, because a lot of people do have their personal device with them, and if they're on a friendly base, they might lower their guard a little bit, and unknown to them, somebody on the outskirts of the base is actually scooping up all their digital information. So I think I would urge, if there's any soldier out there or anybody in Ukraine listening to this, do practice good digital hygiene when deployed. Even at friendly locations, make sure you don't use your personal phone either on the battlefield or adjacent to the battlefield or on bases where you're being trained. Use a secondary phone or something.
Another sort of interesting point there, Patch Barracks is definitely one of the biggest foreign intelligence targets in Europe. It's as headquarters for U.S. European Command. And, with that, there's also a large footprint from probably every U.S. intelligence agency there that's attached to European Command's J2 or their intelligence directorate. So there's a lot of Patch Barracks is a target-rich environment for the Russians. I'm sure, the Army Counterintelligence, the Special Security Office within European Command's J2 directorate. I mean, they know that they're a target, and I'm sure there are all sorts of countermeasures, both seen and unseen, around Patch Barracks. And I would hope that if you're stationed, if you're assigned to a staff position at European Command, that you would get some sort of counterintelligence, digital hygiene training. But that's a a recurring issue here and there. I mean, there was that years ago. There was that whole issue with the Strava app on people's phones,
Yeah.
like the running
Yes.
app.
Special forces people. Yeah, you're running around American bases. Yeah.
Yeah, in Syria. Yeah, you could see where they went for their runs.
No, fascinating. So yeah, digital hygiene is something to definitely be thinking about. So I don't think there's anything else I want to cover. Is there anything else you want to cover there?
No, interesting story, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they were caught and it was disrupted. You know, there were some people on Bluesky just sort of expressing a degree of outrage. And I just had to remind people that, look, they caught these guys and it just shows that counterintelligence is working hard. So hats off to MI5 and the London Met for, getting these people before they actually did real damage.
Right. I'm not sure what the outrage is. I mean, spies are going to spy. I mean, it's not like they again, it was disrupted. They did not succeed in, kidnapping someone off the streets of Europe or something. But yeah, as spies are going to spy, we're going to try to catch them. Luckily, in this case, we did.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So just be wary of those. If you're, if you're a journalist, etc., be careful of new acquaintances, I guess, especially if they are attractive to you.
Yeah.
You got to be really careful about that. So, yeah, I've heard many a interesting story from various people we've interviewed over the years. There was one person, it was when we were talking about the Spire Moscow station, where it was described that a US intelligence officer went to his bedroom at night in a hotel. 10 minutes later, you get a knock on the door. This beautiful woman appears and he declines her offer. And then another 20 minutes go by, another beautiful woman, but of a different sort of ethnicity turns up. And then a man turns up and so on. And he spent most of his night just turning down people. So, beware.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah, indeed.
It does happen. Well, on that note, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back, everybody. So our next story, we're going to be looking at developments with the Ukraine peace plan, or should we say ceasefire. So Matt, you want to talk to us about this?
Yeah, so just before we get into this, just sort of a disclaimer, as we're recording this, it's almost 1:30 in the afternoon on Thursday, March 13th on the East Coast, 1:30 on the East Coast. So by the time this airs on Saturday or whenever you're hearing it, things could be different, but here's where things stand as of right when we're
you telling me we could be in a position of peace by Saturday? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know. I would call it that. I would guess it would probably be something much kind of dumber and infuriating and unnecessary than that, but also define peace. But yeah, anyway. So here's sort of what we know. So Kyiv has agreed to a U.S. proposed ceasefire, one that would pause hostilities for 30 days, but only if Russia agrees to the same terms. The deal emerged after 8 hours of talks in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, involving Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Ukraine's top negotiator Andriy Yermak. President Zelensky has called it a positive step, emphasizing that the ceasefire would completely halt missile, drone, and bomb attacks, not just on the front lines, but across the Black Sea and all contested territory. Now, the real question is whether Putin will play ball, and at this point, the answer suggests that it could be a firm no, but we'll see. I'll explain some more of that in a second here. So this morning, as we're recording here, Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov dismissed the proposal, saying that a ceasefire would be nothing more than a temporary reprieve for Europe to regroup. That tracks with longstanding U.S. intelligence assessments that Putin still believes that time is on his side. He sees no reason to stop now, giving Russia's momentum on the battlefield, trying to dislodge Ukrainian forces from parts of the pockets of Kursk that they've captured, steady military support from North Korea and Iran, and with an as yet unclear role as well from China. At the same time, Ushakov claimed Russia is pursuing a quote, long-term peace settlement, unquote, that accounts for Moscow's interests, which is just Kremlin's shorthand for territorial concessions and a rewritten European security order on Putin's terms. He also described Russia's ongoing dialogue with the U.S. as calm, which could mean anything from diplomatic posturing to quiet back-channel negotiations between Washington and Moscow. Strategically, the ceasefire marked a notable shift after weeks of crisis between Kyiv, Washington, and European capitals. The Trump administration froze military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine, raising serious concerns about America's long-term commitment. Now, with the U.S. quietly resuming some of those intelligence support and security assistance after Ukraine accepted this ceasefire proposal, I think is a welcome and necessary step, but one that doesn't erase anxiety over the White House's broader posture toward Russia. So this is just a truce, not a peace deal. And it doesn't come with U.S. security guarantees, something Trump has signaled he has little interest in providing. That leaves Europe scrambling to step up, with Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron trying to assemble a coalition of peacekeepers. Whether they can come up with a force that reassures Ukraine while also keeping Putin at the table is the next big diplomatic test. And finally, one notable absence from this deal, any discussion of Kyiv, of giving up territory. That's been a big red flag for the Ukrainians. I guess, the Russians want those sort of 4 provinces in Ukraine's eastern part of the country, rather than just the territory that they currently occupy, which is only a fraction of that. So we'll see how this sort of moves forward, if there's more sort of back channeling between the U.S. and Russia to sort of bring the Russians around to the table. We will see. But if this ceasefire somehow does morph into real negotiations, yeah, we'll see. But I don't know about you, Chris. I would see this as I would rather be here where we are than when you and I were talking last week.
Yeah, I still have my reservations,
Sure.
which I expressed. But so I mean, first of all, I suppose I had reservations about Marco Rubio based on his lack of reaction to that disastrous meeting that occurred at the White House. But to be fair to Secretary Rubio, if he hadn't praised and fawned over Trump after that meeting, he likely wouldn't have a job. So my first reaction to this meeting in Saudi Arabia was, thank God the adults in the room are talking and President Trump is far from this conversation. Yep. That was my first initial thing. I think the US pushing for a 30-day ceasefire, on the one hand, this is a positive, but it doesn't guarantee that Russia will not exploit the time it gives them to sort of regroup or violate those terms of ceasefire. I kind of see the ceasefire as very symbolic for Trump. I think he'd almost be happy to have achieved a ceasefire, and then if it all falls apart, he might be able to sort of wash his hands of it and say, well, look, I've tried. So I'm a bit sort of dubious about this sort of ceasefire, because for America at the moment, it seems to be incredibly important to push this. But as the Ukrainians have been warning until the White House blow up, that this ceasefire lacks a few practical things that will actually guarantee peace. So you could have 30 days of peace, or we could have many years of peace. And I think at the moment everybody's more interested in 30 days than the bigger picture. Now, obviously, Ukraine's accepted the terms of the ceasefire, and it does now leave the ball in Russia's court, which is a good thing. Russia have been very aggressive. Russia have been very aggressive in their missile attacks over the last few weeks, and they've been maximalizing any advantage they have with dwindling US support for Ukraine. I'm also happy to see that Ukrainian children who have been taken by the Russians have not been forgotten, and that there are demands for their return. I really dread to think what they've had to endure and what level of Russian indoctrination they may have been subjected to. I'm pleased to see that US sharing of intelligence is happening again. I believe they should never have been stopped. I thought it was irresponsible for the US to do that, but there we go. Some argue this may have helped Russia make gains in the Kursk region. I'm sure further reporting will shed light on whether that is the case. Ukraine and many Western officials are skeptical as to whether Putin actually wants peace, and even if he will accept a 30-day ceasefire. And if he does and continues fighting, I'm concerned as to how, as I was saying earlier, how the Trump administration will react, because I feel like for Trump at the moment, the symbolic nature of this 30-day ceasefire is more important than anything else. And I'm concerned that if it all falls apart, which I think it will, I'll bet Russia will be the ones who make it fall apart, that somehow it will be blamed on Ukraine, and that there's a potential that Trump will continue blocking military aid to Ukraine, and Trump will just say, well, we tried, and then blame it on President Zelensky. And as I said last week, I think both Putin and Trump are looking for ways to push Zelensky out of office. And if this 30-day ceasefire fails, I think Zelensky will be the one getting the blame, not Putin. But time will tell on that one. Now, it's good to see Trump has invited Zelensky back to the White House, and I hope President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer will go with him, as I think Zelensky could benefit from their support in front of Trump. And I hope Vice President Vance is sent off on a trip to inspect algae in Alaska or something fitting of his personality and qualifications. I don't think he should be in that meeting at all. And also what annoys me is there's still no security guarantees from the US, which frankly is the card that they should be playing if they're serious about peace. Because if Putin feels he is threatened and that he saw that there's a prospect of real force could be used against him, I only think then he will start to play ball. And the fact that the Trump administration have taken that off the table before negotiations have really started, to me, just strikes me as deeply irresponsible. And at the moment, Russia have military support from weapons from Iran, North Korea, and unspecified aid from China. So unless that is cut off, I think Putin sees himself in a very good position, and he is going to attempt to achieve his objective. And then just to quote Dr. Phillips O'Brien from his newsletter on the ceasefire, he notes that unlike Ukraine, which was punished by an actual draconian aid and intelligence cutoff, Russia has received aid by Trump to this point. Russia has seen the US damage its enemy Ukraine, has seen US officials actually go to great lengths to improve relations with Russia, and is in regular contact with the White House. It is Russia that sees the US asking for concrete concessions from Ukraine and nothing specific from it. As you can see, Russia has gained a great deal, is what Phillips O'Brien says. So I'm not popping any champagne corks yet, and I won't be skipping through any sunflower fields or doing any Snoopy happy dances right now. I feel very deeply cynical about all of this, and I just hope that that something positive can come from this. And on a side note, I am pleased to see our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, really step up to the occasion and work closely with our European allies. And I can only hope this is the beginning of closer ties with Europe in a time when there are strategic gaps now caused by dwindling US support for Europe. I really hope that Europe can step up and sort of fill that gap. But only time will tell. But it seems to me that this is the worst time for Europe to be in a situation where they might not be able to count on the US. So those are my 10 pennies worth on all this.
Yeah, I think the ceasefire development is a real testament to Zelensky's diplomatic prowess and sheer resilience, qualities that have served him well since day one of this war, and no doubt are exactly why Putin wants him gone, I'm sure. Zelensky walked into that Oval Office meeting at the end of last month and got bullied and humiliated by Trump and JD Vance, who, despite their personal insecurities, somehow expected him to apologize to them. And yet Zelensky didn't take the bait. He didn't cave to performative outrage or get dragged into Trump's fragile ego trip. Instead, he kept his focus on Ukraine's survival, navigating the fallout like an adult, while Trump and Vance behaved like petulant children. And what's the result? The U.S. has resumed military and intelligence support. Those sort of negotiating tactics, as he said last week, these are negotiating tactics. It's wrong to use them as negotiating tactics, but to the Trump people, that's what they were. And Ukraine has managed to flip the scripts, putting Russia in the position of either accepting a ceasefire or exposing itself as the real obstacle to peace. And, Zelensky should have never had to bend over backwards to placate Trump. But if there's some movement here since we record that causes his ceasefire proposal to be accepted by the Russians, I think even I think just the optics of Trump demanding this ceasefire proposal, Zelensky saying, okay, fine, and the Russians saying no, I think that is a fundamentally positive step to see that as to who's the real obstacle to peace here, not just for Ukraine, but the entire Western alliance. In just over a week, we've gone from a 5-alarm diplomatic crisis to Ukraine sitting in Jeddah with U.S. officials hammering out a ceasefire that puts the ball squarely in Putin's court. And, frankly, as you said, with the adults in the room in your comments, if there are any two people on Trump's national security team that I would want handling this, away from JD Vance's obnoxious face, far away from his obnoxious face, it's Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz, who are sort of traditional national security hawk conservatives in the, regular kind of bent that most people know. and find acceptable to a degree.
Yeah, and I think you could see from Marco Rubio's face during that White House thing that he
He
clearly was
knew.
not comfortable. He
He
knows
knew.
what's going on, and it's easy for me to criticize him for not stepping up, but if
Yeah.
he did step up and go against Trump, he would be out of a job, and then who knows who'd be negotiating this.
They, at least, from Mike Waltz, from his past positions and stuff in Congress and, Rubio's whole career, they at least seem to understand Ukraine's importance to the U.S. and NATO. They seem to, in this instance, have been given the space to actually do their jobs. The next test that I'm looking for is how Trump reacts if it's a firm, solid no from the Russians. And I don't know. I mean, there was that comment from that Kremlin aide this morning. I don't know if that's him just sort of casting doubt on it, or if that comes, okay, it didn't come from someone like Sergei Lavrov or Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson or something. So I potentially room for more movement there in the future. And again, maybe by the time this episode is released, we'll have that. But, make no mistake, though, U.S. intelligence estimates have long indicated that Putin isn't looking to wind down the war. He still thinks he's winning. Everything from the military support he's getting, the Western schism, it's all reinforcing his belief that time is on his side. So if Russia rejects the ceasefire or violates it once it's in place, will Trump respond with the same performative outrage and maximum pressure tactics that he throws at Ukraine? Or will he move the goalposts again, never uttering a critical word of Putin while finding new ways to blame Zelensky? That'll be telling, because despite this positive movement, Trump's broader posture towards Russia still hasn't changed.
Yeah, if Putin does violate the 30-day ceasefire, which I think is highly likely, the interesting other thing will be obviously the reaction of European leaders to it, and Trump will be in a situation where if he is still, being Putin's number one fan, running the Vladimir Putin fan club as he seems to be, he will find himself a bit isolated a little bit. He will not be singing from the same hymn sheet as the European allies, and that will create a very interesting situation as well. Whether Trump gives a monkeys about that, I don't know. Because I think, because Trump originally promised he'd end this in a day, and obviously that's not happened. It's a bit like Putin thought he was going to end this war in 3 days, and that didn't happen either. The Ukraine conflict, there's a lot of people with bold ideas, and it all kind of falls apart. And there are a lot of egos involved in this in regards to Putin. His entire political future seems to be based on a successful outcome in Ukraine. Trump has made the war about him now, and about him being the peacemaker, because then he could be better than President Biden, as he likes to call him. He wants to, I think Ukraine probably, if they want it, they should, to increase their chance of Trump support, is they should start naming things after Donald Trump, and I don't know, rename Kyiv the Donald Trump Center for Peace and Reconciliation or something. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I've said to you offline in the past, like over the last 2 weeks when shit was looking really bad, I said to you in a moment of frustration, Putin can manipulate the shit out of him. Why can't the Europeans? You shouldn't have to play his game. It's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly annoying. Trust me, I know it's annoying. It's been stuck in here for a decade, but he is able to be manipulated. And I don't know. I think while all eyes are understandably on this immediate moment, and this, relates back to stuff we were talking about last week, I hope Europe is thinking beyond just the next 4 years. So far, Starmer and Macron seem to get that. I think this last couple of weeks have been Britain's best moment on the global stage since Brexit. Really incredible how he's stepped up. So Europe's working towards long-term security guarantees and a strategic posture that isn't dependent on the shifting whims of American politics. And that's crucial, because even if this ceasefire comes to be, a real negotiation that leads to some sort of peace agreement, Ukraine's security and Europe's security cannot be tied to our election cycles. But at the same time, both European leaders and their people shouldn't succumb to the doomerism that a traditional transatlantic friendly U.S. president will never again occupy the White House. That kind of despair, I think, can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And more importantly, it's exactly what both Putin and MAGA diehards want. They want you to feel that America is lost, that NATO is dead, that resistance is pointless. Doing so, I think, is absolutely a form of obeying in advance. For now, though, Ukraine is in a stronger position than it was a week ago. Zelensky's still standing, and that alone is a victory. And these days, I'll take it.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, any forward progress is something. So we will keep an eye on this, and as more developments come in, hopefully positive ones, we'll keep you abreast. Well, I think let's take another break, and we'll be right back. So welcome back, everybody. So for our next story, we're going to be looking at new information on this quite cool-looking new drone ship. So Matt, I'll hand this over to you.
Yeah, so just spotted off the coast of Washington State, a mysterious naval vessel has raised plenty of eyebrows, and for good reason. The 180-foot, 240 metric ton Defiant has now been confirmed as the latest creation under DARPA's No Manning Required Ship, or NOMARS, I believe you call it, program. What makes her different is she's designed to operate indefinitely with zero human presence aboard. So that means no crew quarters, no galley, nothing that would typically make a ship habitable. This is the U.S. military's vision for the future of naval warfare, a fully autonomous, uncrewed warship capable of long-duration missions at sea without ever needing a human to step foot on deck. Built by Serco as a testbed, Defiant is part of a larger push to integrate more uncrewed surface vessels, or USVs, into the Navy's fleet. Her design prioritizes efficiency, modularity, and something DARPA calls graceful degradation. The idea that as individual systems inevitably fail over time, the vessel still maintains core functions. She features open deck space to accommodate modular payloads, everything from sensors and cargo to potential missile launchers. Future versions of the class could carry an array of weapons, including the adaptable deck launching system, which can fire the same missiles used as the Mark 41 vertical launch system found on U.S. and allied warships.
Yeah.
This means we're potentially looking at autonomous missile boats, a massive shift in naval warfare strategy, a whole bunch of implications for the Pacific there. But beyond the technical specs, Defiant speaks to a larger issue: America's struggle to scale up its naval fleet and shipbuilding capacity while keeping pace with China's rapid military expansion. So the U.S. Navy has faced major shipbuilding challenges with limited yard capacity, slowing production and maintenance. A platform like Defiant, which can be built outside traditional shipyards, even in railworks, offers a potential way around this bottleneck. It also aligns with the Navy's recent shift towards smaller, simpler, and more scalable uncrewed systems rather than overly complex, expensive designs. Now, DARPA is preparing Defiant for extensive sea trials this spring, where she will demonstrate whether a vessel with zero human oversight can truly operate at the level required for modern naval combat. If successful, this ship could mark a major step toward a future where robotic warships patrol the oceans, raising strategic opportunities and serious questions about autonomy, security, and the ethics of AI-driven warfare. Chris, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, multiple things. First of all, I have a question. Was the name Defiant meant to be a Star Trek Deep Space Nine reference?
I don't know.
Because that was the name of their little ship that protected Deep Space Nine, wasn't it?
I don't know. Maybe there are. I'd imagine there are more than a few Trekkies at DARPA.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, a bit interesting to find that out. So if anybody at DARPA is listening, and feel free to message us to confirm or deny that. But yeah, so no, off the bat, looks very impressive. It's impressive development for unmanned naval vessels, which have their pros and cons, as you sort of been alluding to there. So obviously we've seen from the war in Ukraine how effective small unmanned sea drones have been. The Ukrainians have devastated Russian naval forces in the Black Sea, and it's been of little cost to them in manpower terms. The downside of drone ships, though, I think, will be how countermeasures may develop and be, created to block signals to send to those ships, because obviously an autonomous ship is still going to have to receive signals to kind of know what its mission is, etc. And worse, could these ships get hacked by your enemy and turned against you? I'm sure if we're in a conflict with a near peer competitor like China or Russia, they're going to work out ways to block those signals or to hack those ships, which I'm sure DARPA will be looking very hard at preventing. But time has shown again and again, if something is hackable, it will eventually get hacked. So I hope the US Navy will be cautious with this and how it goes forward with its use of drones, because I think, obviously you were saying the benefits, long-term deployments, they'll be able to kind of go on, on these sort of missions without having to worry so much about looking after the crew. If they were to go down the road of creating like unmanned frigates, they could use that to bolster the capability of manned ships. I think the ultimate way to use a drone ship is actually to pair it with a manned ship. So there's always a manned and a drone ship. Then if it all goes haywire, at least you've still got some capability out there. So I think like using them on defensive missions like the Red Sea, the last year when NATO forces or NATO ships have been deployed to protect shipping from Houthi rebel attacks, this is where those autonomous ships with a manned ship could be really useful, because you can kind of double the firepower. I think there's a lot of pros and cons here. I think this, again, you talk about the ethics of autonomous ships. If you send a ship out that's supposed to have its own initiative, it could make all sorts of weird decisions, and we've seen 2001 and HAL 9000, etc. And I think there's a genuine issue to be debated, because I think we are slowly we're slowly slipping into using more and more drones, because the benefits of not putting your people in danger are pushed as the key thing. But I think you still need a human in the equation at all times in conflict, because humans, they kind of see the grey and understand the grey and can make kind of better decisions than I think a computer that only sees in black and white. So that's my opinion on it.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. It seems like almost a naval version of what the Air Force is rolling out right now with their CCAs, their collaborative combat aircraft, which are like those drone, AI-powered drone, like loyal wingmen
which
fighters.
Is a great concept, yeah.
Right. Well, that would accompany the thought is that would, so a sixth generation fighter like the NGAD, or I believe F-35s are going to be upgraded to be able to use these as well. But an NGAD fighter that's piloted by a human, right, would have 2, 3, maybe 4 of these CCAs or loyal wingmen drones that they would sort of operate as one sort of networked unit. And in a battlefield potentially like the Indo-Pacific, when you're dealing with vast distances, issues around refueling, around effective range of air-to-air or anti-ship missiles, China being able to really push out the extent of denied or contested airspace far into the Western Pacific in a way that, at least certainly in our lifetimes, has just not been a concern for the U.S. military. It kind of, enables, rather than sending the manned fighter into this sort of contested airspace, they stay farther back, and the CCAs, these, drones, go in. And they're kind of designed to be almost expendable. They're not meant to have the same sort of service life as a, regular F-22 or an F-35 would. This sort of seems to be like a similar concept, at least, for the Navy. There's all kinds of potential use cases here. So China's submarine force is a big asymmetric. It's a big asymmetric threat. So the Defiant, or a future version of it, could patrol contested waters with advanced sonar and torpedoes, hunting for Chinese subs without risking a manned crew. The Pacific, as I've said, is also an absolute nightmare for logistics. A lot of times you'll hear the term "the tyranny of distance" bandied about in like think tank papers and stuff. So if the U.S. does go to war with China, keeping the fleet fueled and armed will be one of the hardest challenges. Future versions of Defiant could serve as autonomous supply ships, ferrying weapons, fuel, and parts across vast distances of the Pacific without human risk or manpower strains. And then, there's the issue around our shipbuilding constraints that we have right now, which is a serious issue that we have to get on top of, like yesterday. The other, you mentioned the cybersecurity concerns about, disabling or disrupting it or something. I was looking at pictures of this and I'm just like thinking to myself, like, what would stop a Chinese naval special forces team from boarding it and disabling it, or just, stealing it or something? And that's something that I'm sure DARPA has also asked himself that question and is on top of that. But it's a very new, very cool platform. We have a lot of these things coming online right now. I mentioned the CCA drones. Two of those variants that are sort of still undergoing testing right now. One from General Atomics and the other from Anduril. We just got like designations for them, and they have a new FQ or fighter drone designation, which is brand new for the Air Force. Very cool. It's one of those things, you see stuff like this and you're like, oh wow, we are in the future. For better or for worse, I don't know. We could all be screwed, our
Yeah.
new AI overlords. I don't know. But
just be polite to chat GTP.
I always say please and thank you.
Yeah, I try to. At times I forget, but 90% of the time I say thank you very much for your help there, chat GTP. Or is it Google Gemini, which I quite like, except for as soon as you mention a politician's name, I cannot talk about politics. So that always makes me chuckle. But there we go. Excellent. Well, thank you for pointing that one out, because I think it's a really interesting piece, and I think it's always a good idea to keep an eye on sort of technological advancements for good and bad. I think there's some really interesting stuff that's we're on the verge of seeing, like the 6th gen fighters and things like that. So yeah.
Definitely.
So our final piece might be a bit of a downer, and I apologize. So this is an article titled "Putin Has Won" by Franklin Foer for The Atlantic. So the key points are: over the past 25 years, Vladimir Putin has reshaped global politics by undermining democracy, destabilizing Western alliances, and expanding Russia's influence through a mix of aggression and subversion. The US, once a major obstacle to Putin's ambitions, has become an enabler under Trump, who has weakened efforts to counter Russian influence, dismantled protections against foreign kleptocracy, and sought to reintegrate Putin into the global order. Using tactics from his KGB past, Putin has interfered in elections, cultivated far-right allies in the West, and weaponized social media to weaken democratic institutions, all while promoting an anti-woke counter-narrative. Ukraine has been central to resisting Putin's ambitions, but US support has waned under Trump, and with aid and intelligence sharing previously cut off, significantly weakening Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russian aggression. Putin has succeeded by exploiting the weaknesses of Western democracies, betting on their short attention spans and internal divisions, whilst using autocracy's advantages, which are control, patience, and ruthlessness, to outmaneuver his democratic adversaries. So, Matt, what are your thoughts? Do you think Putin has won, or is winning?
Yeah, I get what Foer's trying to do here. He's not just saying that Putin has won on the battlefield or that Ukraine is lost. He's making a much bigger existential argument that we're in a new era, an age of Putin, you might say, where democracy is in retreat, authoritarianism is ascendant, and I get why people feel that way, why you would look at it objectively and think that. When you look at the past decade, whether it's Brexit, Trump, Orban, Le Pen, election interference, disinformation, Ukraine under assault, the transatlantic alliance under strain, it's easy to feel that we've lost control of the forward trajectory of history. Here's where I depart from that argument, because I don't think history works like that. Foer is periodizing the present moment as if it's already finished, and as if the outcome is set. It's not. We don't know how this ends because we're still living through it. The arc of history isn't something we just observe. It's something we shape through choices, actions, and resistance. And let's be real, if Putin had won already, then why is he still fighting? Why isn't he in
Yeah.
Kyiv right now? Why does he still need mass repression at home? Why has he led 1 million Russian sons to slaughter over 3 years into a war he assured would be over in 3 days? Why is he still begging North Korea for artillery shells and extra cannon fodder who don't even know which country they're fighting in or that they're even in a war? This is not the position of a man who has decisively won the 21st century. It's the position of a dictator desperately trying to hold together his imperial project. Now, where I think he has a point and where his argument is useful is in recognizing just how much ground has been lost. I think he is right that Putin didn't just react to events, he shaped them. His vision, authoritarian capitalism, oligarchy, revanchism has gained traction. And yes, Trump's return to power is a massive victory for him. There's no way to sugarcoat that. It signals that for now, the US president is no longer a counterweight to autocracy, but in some cases, even an enabler of it. But I don't think that's the end of the story, thankfully.
No.
And this is where I get frustrated with how I think this can lend itself to fatalism. Despair is not a strategy. The more people believe the game is lost, the less they'll fight it. That's exactly the kind of learned helplessness that authoritarians weaponize and thrive upon. They don't want to just win. They want their enemies to give up. And that's why Putin and MAGA nationalists constantly scream about how the West is dying, how America's a shithole country, how liberalism is finished. They want you to internalize that defeat before it even happens, to accept their inherent nihilism as your own. Because if you stop believing that victory is possible, that there's still something worth fighting for, you won't try to fight. So, yes, let's take this warning seriously, but not perhaps in the way. Let's do it in a productive, healthy way. If you don't want this to be the age of Putin, then what does the alternative look like? What does resistance to that vision require? Because history is not a spectator sport, kind of a cliche, but we're shaping it right now with every action we take. And the worst thing we can do, the most self-destructive thing we can do, is act as though the fight is already lost. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I don't think Putin's won. I think he's actually on the ropes. But I think but I will say, I think we need to acknowledge that Putin, in my opinion, has been the most effective leader on the world stage of this century so far. Obviously, we're only 25 years in, but he's murdered and manipulated his way to a situation where even his number one strategic foe, the United States, now has a president in charge who is his number one fan. And the US population are too busy, and should we say the Western population, a lot of us are too busy fighting amongst ourselves over disinformation and conspiracy theories, which a lot of them have their roots from Russia, through Russian bot factories, etc. And obviously, you can't blame all conspiracy theories and injustice on Putin, but what the Russians do very well is they find little kernels of truth, and they use those kernels for their disinformation efforts, and they exploit injustices and corruption and exaggerate them to the point where no one knows which way is up from down. And I think that's kind of the world we're in right now. I think Putin's done an awful lot of damage. Maybe it's a bit like Star Trek 2. The Enterprise has been hit really badly by Khan, and we're in a desperate situation, and we need to get engines restored again and get this ship out of danger, because I think that's where we're at with democracy right now. I think we're at a point where this could be Putin's winning, or it might not be. And I'm not convinced currently, with the current administration, that we have the right people in place to not let Putin win, with regards to America. Now, Europe is stepping up to the challenge a little bit, but Europe cannot do this alone. Right now, it's a bit like, do you remember we talked about the other week about the imperfections of DEI? You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with it, because DEI, yes, it has its imperfections, but this is not the way to then fix DEI by just getting rid of it and banning words, etc. And I think this is a bit like with Trump and European security. If you're going to pull the rug from Europe and expect them just to fill the void just like that, it's not going to happen, especially when there's an active war going on. So I think we're in a very dangerous place. I think there's always room for optimism. I think there's always room for hope. But I think we've got to be really careful that we don't let blind optimism blind us from Putin's effectiveness and the damage that man has done.
I would think, as Europe is absolutely stepping up right now, as we've talked about in the last episode and some of in this episode. And, I think part of that is absolutely driven by our current, hopefully temporary insanity. But it would have been necessary also even without that, as we've said several times. Even if Kamala Harris had won, it would still be necessary. But, I think the question of whether or not this is going to be the age of Putin. Okay, you can say perhaps this is the age of Putin right now. Will it continue indefinitely? Will it be the century of Putin? Is perhaps still the question.
He's going to be dead possibly in the next 10 to 20 years, either through natural causes or something else.
Who knows, right? And after that, he has never... his arrogance, his ego, which insists upon itself and has for, over 20 years, has not allowed himself to anoint a successor. He has no sons, right? So what happens after him is really anybody's guess.
Death of Stalin, that's what it is.
Right. As part of that, as we asked ourselves, is this the age of Putin? Will this be the century of Putin? Are we going to accept that? What are we going to do about that? It's also a question for Europe as well. I mean, let's not ignore the fact that far right pro-Russian populism isn't just a problem for the U.S. It's also alive and well in Europe. In France, the National Rally has been creeping ever closer to the Elysee for a decade. In Germany, AfD is now the second largest party in the Bundestag. The transatlantic alliance isn't just about keeping Trump and Vance in check and Putin at bay. It's also about making sure Europe itself doesn't fall into the same trap. The threat of far-right NATO-skeptical forces gaining power on both sides of the Atlantic is real, and any European defense planning that doesn't take that into account is dangerously short-sighted. Does Europe want to seek shelter under Marine Le Pen's nuclear umbrella? Would be my question.
No,
as Macron will not be around forever.
No, exactly, and I think it's an interesting place where we're at politically at the moment because groups of either extreme seem to getting more and more popular because they're promising things in a language that's not political speak. Politicians and political speak tend to be very cautious about making hard promises because most politicians know that anything can happen and hard promises are very hard to keep. And I'm always distrustful of anybody who says, I could do this, that, and the other. And interesting that with Trump's use of executive power, as far as I know, that's one of the weakest ways to create legislation, isn't it? Because it can all be shot down in court eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it can all be shot down in court. So, okay, so if you, let's say, USAID, right? If you wanted to get rid of USAID, you can go in the building and just fire everybody and close out all the accounts and everything and do it illegally. And if you don't have a Congress that is willing to step up and say, no, you can't do that, you can do it to an extent, but that's all through executive orders and just because you just went in the building and just burned it down and fired everybody, right? But it makes it much easier in the future for another administration, hopefully, to just undo it because it's not done under the law, right? So if Congress passed a law that said USAID is disbanded, it is no more, you would need 60 votes in the Senate to reinstate it, to put it back. But all the stuff that's done with executive orders, and this frequently happens in any changeover between administrations, there's a whole slew of executive orders that, cancel stuff that the other guy did before and vice versa. It goes back and forth, right? And there are some very kind of different obscure rules and regulations that every single time the White House has changed hands between parties, stuff gets turned on and off, right? So yes, part of this strategy, the Muskian Doge strategy of move fast and break things, right? Taking that Silicon Valley mindset to the federal government of the most powerful country on earth, right? Which doesn't work. But part of that, of moving fast and breaking things, is you're doing it in a way that makes it much easier to undo. Whereas if you had done it the right and legal and constitutional way through Congress.
Well, the most effective politics is slow. isn't it? Because it's all about negotiations, about getting people on side. Things get watered down a little bit to make appeasements, etc. But then you get solid legislation that's very difficult to undo. Whilst if you use just a power's executive office, you're making yourself very vulnerable. Even though you appear like you're making a lot of difference, is all a bit performative in many respects.
It's surface deep.
Yeah. So, just as a warning to people, really, is just to, in some ways that's hopeful, and in some ways that's something to be careful of, because you've got to be careful about politicians who come up with easy answers to complex situations, because we do live in a complex world. Nothing's ever perfect. It's probably akin to herding cats or something, trying to sort things out. And I'm a cat lover, but cats can be a pain, and they've got attitudes of their own and their own opinions of things, so it's hard. So I think all of us have got to be doubly careful about not being swayed by these kind of politicians who do seem to be in vogue at the moment, these sort of with authoritarian tendencies. And I think also, there's a whole interesting legislative question as well about groups that, you've got to be careful not to slip into McCarthyism with this, but how to deal with groups that are trying to use democracy to subvert it and damage democracy. And I think there's some long, hard question about that requires smarter people than me to come up with a solution to it. But there is a question there that definitely needs to find a way to be dealt with, where it doesn't turn into McCarthyism. So
yeah. Absolutely. That's a tough chart, path to walk.
Path, definitely. So, So, is there anything else to add there, Matt? Or
no? I think I've sort of said how I feel about it. This is not just a problem for the U.S. It's a problem for the entire sort of Western liberal democratic world, and it continues to be so. And if you just sort of accept, this is the age of Putin now, that's like accepting in 1942 that this is the age of Adolf Hitler. Only one way that's going to go for you if you accept that then.
Yeah, so we've got to fight them on the beaches, etc. I can't remember Churchill's full speech, but look it up. I'm sure it's got some rousing bits in there. But we mustn't let the bastards win.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is us done for today. So thank you very much for listening. Just a reminder, as I was saying at the beginning of the episode, please do send in your questions either via email, which is secretsandspiespodcast@gmail.com, or DM us on Instagram, Bluesky, etc. And I can't remember the others at the moment.
They're all in the show notes. Just links to everything in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. Go to the show notes. It's all in there. Also, if you enjoy this podcast, you can go ad-free on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/secrets and spies. We do have a merchandise store at Redbubble. If you go into the show notes, you can go there and you can buy yourself cups, t-shirts, water bottles, even tote bags. And there's one tote bag in the Middle East out there right now. And then we also have a YouTube page. You can watch us on YouTube. Hello there. You can watch us on YouTube. So just just type in Secrets and Spies podcast, or come up, but we're also in the show notes there. So Matt, any exciting plans for the weekend? You up to anything nice?
I'm recording 3 episodes next week back to back. So I gotta prep for that. I got to work on that. Homework.
Yeah, me too. I've got quite a few.
The grind don't stop.
Yeah, I know. It's gone crazy, isn't it, at the moment? But we're building up a lot of interesting interviews that are coming out over the next sort of few weeks. It's just we're trying to now schedule them all properly so they don't all kind of land on top of each other. So we'll figure that out going forward. And then, just as a reminder, buddy, so next week's our last episode of March. And then we'll be returning with Espresso Martini on the 3rd of April, because we're taking the last week of March off. It should be nice. So on the 29th of March, whilst Matt and I are away, I don't know, sitting on a beach somewhere earning 20% like Hans Gruber, I wish, we will have an episode coming out with former FBI Special Agent Eric O'Neill, who brought down Robert Hanssen, the big traitor within the FBI. So I've got a really interesting interview coming up about that and about cybersecurity, which is the area Eric O'Neill's now an expert in. So that will be a really exciting episode.
I'm excited to hear that one.
Yeah. Eric was really interesting, and there's some really good tips in there about cybersecurity and some interesting insight on Robert's habits himself, and even potentially his favorite James Bond movie. So
he was a weird guy.
He was. If anybody's ever seen the film Breach, he's played by Chris Cooper, and yeah, he is a very edgy character, is a very bizarre character, man of many contradictions, deeply religious, yet at the same time selling videos of his wife naked or having sex on the internet. Very weird man, very weird man. How he ever got a security clearance, I don't know. But apparently to his peers, he was a lovely guy. So it's, fascinating. So human psychology is always surprising. So so I hope that interview sheds some light on all of that. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that one. So that'll be coming out on the 29th, which is the weekend we're away. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share away. Thank you so much for all the kind comments about last week. And, thank you for all the interaction. We're really enjoying it. Please feel free keeping this dialogue going. It's really nice to sort of hear from everybody and get to know people out there who are listening to us. So thank you very much. So, on that note, take care and have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week. Goodbye for now.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. This is Secrets and Spies,